Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. This is the second part of a two-part City Talk conversation on the 2008 presidential election. Mac, Mitt, Rudy, Huck, and Fred? Is the Reagan coalition dead? Will Rudy's Florida strategy fly, or will in the Sunshine State he die?
Oh. Ooh. You could be a rapper with that, Doug.
Oh, man. Joining me again to talk 2008 presidential politics are Ronnie Eldridge, my colleague here at CUNY TV as host of Eldridge Company. Ronnie is a longtime Democratic Party activist and former city councilwoman. Sheryl McCarthy is also at CUNY, and she's the host of 121. She's a longtime columnist and contributor to Newsday, was a Nieman Fellow at Harvard, serves on the board of contributors of USA Today, and is a distinguished lecturer in journalism at Queens College. Evelyn Hernandez is a political reporter and former editor and editorial writer at El Diario La Prensa. She's been a reporter at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, the Miami Herald, and Newsday. She is a past president and founding member of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. Welcome back, folks.
Thank you.
So last week we talked Democrats. We talked primarily Obama and Clinton. Let's go to the Republicans. And the race there is different. We seem to agree, except Evelyn disagreed at least a bit, that it's a two-person race in the Democratic field, right? It's Hillary and Obama. Evelyn, you last week thought Edwards, does he have a shot?
I just said we shouldn't count him out just yet.
I mean, he's got to win South Carolina. Even if he wins that, can he do it?
He can make the candidate. He has some delegates. He's going to go to the convention, so he could be the deciding person.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. But that race is begun to solidify and shake out. The Republican race is really, really fluid.
It's all
You've
over
got
the place.
Huckabee winning in Iowa. You've got McCain winning in New Hampshire. You've got Romney in Wyoming. And Rudy's waiting in Florida. And there's South Carolina. What's going on in the Republican race? Talk about it.
You know, for a long time, I just assumed it was going to be Giuliani.
Right.
I thought Giuliani was he was just working. I thought, Evelyn, that he was going to parlay that America's mayor, out there into the Republican nominee. But then, his decision not to campaign in Iowa and New Hampshire, has put him, at least temporarily, on the back burner. And really interesting to me, McCain's rise in New Hampshire, once Romney showed that he didn't have the legs. And I really think the McCain thing is about the character issue, which I've talked about before. Somebody who really seems to be about something, committed to something. McCain, you have his whole prisoner of war background. You also have his, ironically, his continuing support for the war. He thinks that we can win it. I mean, I think it's ridiculous, but he truly believes it, is committed to that, even though it is unpopular.
He wants to accelerate it, doesn't he? He wants to increase the troops.
I think he does. I mean, his support for George Bush's immigration plan, which I think, and I've said before, was probably the best thing that George Bush put forward, but it's wildly unpopular. But
particularly among McCain's base, the Republican base.
But McCain
anyway.
stood for it, and I think definitely what people were voting for, when Romney sort of tanked out of New Hampshire, was character. John McCain's character, because he has it, and others, we don't know what they got.
He doesn't change his mind. Romney changes his mind all the time.
Rudy and Romney are like beach fish. They flip-flop all the time.
And Giuliani had all that bad
You're the
publicity.
reporter. You're the on-the-ground reporter in the group.
Right.
What's your sense of what's going on?
Well, Romney has up to this point come in second, and which normally wouldn't be a bad thing, except that he was expected to do much better than that.
He spent a ton of money.
So much money. on the campaign. So it was surprising that he wasn't doing better. But I just think there's a lot of, there's just a lot of people are all over the map basically on the Republicans. And Rudy's decision to focus on Florida could really be his downfall, because he came in last or close to last in Iowa and in New Hampshire, and after a while,
and he's not running in South Carolina.
And he's not running in South Carolina. And after a while, that's what sticks in people's minds: the fact that he's, that if I recall correctly, in one race, Ron Paul did better than he did.
Well, he's gone from the top of the national heap, as you just suggested, to
nowhere.
now running fourth.
But he's a victim of character, isn't he? You said you felt that the New York press really finally got picked up.
Right. But the New York press started recycling the stories that we had written when Rudy was mayor. Before he became untouchable because of 9/11, and those stories started being recycled and amplified on.
What are the stories?
Well,
repeat them. Come on.
Let's wallow in the stories.
Well, the stories
the
about
infidelities,
about his
serial
the breakup
adultery.
of his marriage while he was in office, while he was mayor. The fact that
Public
he was actually
divorce on television
seeing the woman who is now his wife while he was still married to Donna Hanover, the use of the improper use in the investigation of the use of security when he was going out to Long Island to visit her.
Bernie Carrick,
which actually was fresh right as the campaign season picked up, became fresh because Carrick got indicted. So that just brought it all up to the fore, and so the New York press was writing about these things, and now there was a national campaign going on, so the national media picked up on it. So now people all over the country know about it.
And the clients of his company. I mean, I think that had some little bit.
What about the issues? We've been talking about character and personality and strategic mistakes. Did the issues play anything in his downfall?
But I think, in a funny way, I think 9/11 began to be ridiculed. I mean, there were political cartoons, with him just being 9/11.
Well, I mean, Biden's coming
Biden said that
every verb in 9/11.
Every sentence he says has a noun, a verb, and 9/11 in it.
We haven't mentioned Huckabee.
Well, we're certainly going to talk about that. Now, we talk about the Democratic election as being historic. The Democratic nominee is going to be a black man or a white woman, and the potential president is going to be a black man or a white woman. In the Republican Party, you don't have as much history. You would have the first Italian American.
Another white guy.
Wait a minute. The 45th white guy. Wait a minute. The 45th white guy. The first Italian American. Come on. Second Catholic. The first twice divorced, 3 times married candidate. First Mormon. So there's less history.
Does Rudy still count as a Catholic, really?
No, I mean, he's been excommunicated because he can't receive communion because of his
that's not excommunicated.
No, he can't receive communion. I'm sorry. The nuns would have been very upset.
Do you think that there's a possibility of another candidate coming in? Is it technically possible?
Well, it's
such as our mayor.
Excuse me,
Mike
we're going to talk about Mr.
No, I
Mike.
don't mean as a third party. I mean within the Republican Party.
I doubt it. I mean, come on. Or Al Gore in the Democratic Party.
They don't even have anybody, do they?
Come on.
No.
This is the field.
So
you got to pick from this
Their
field.
talent is so little. It's amazing.
Well, I mean, from your biased Democratic perspective.
Well, they don't. Look at I mean, nobody's excited about the candidate. Are they? A few people are excited about each of the candidates. They're not.
The excitement clearly is, I mean, you saw it in the crowds.
Right.
In Iowa and New Hampshire.
The excitement is around the Democrats.
And it's not only the Democrats that are excited, but the independents are excited.
And the disgruntled Republicans are voting in some of these open primaries.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. That old liberal wing used to have the Rockefeller Republicans, and I mean, even Taft, they weren't like the Republicans
today. And Bloomberg is not going to run. I don't care what.
Oh, okay, wait.
I agree with you.
Don't jump. Evelyn seems to disagree. Let's talk about that, but let's hold on. It seems to me that the Reagan coalition, I'm going to sound a little bit like a political scientist, which was made up of fiscal conservatives, national security conservatives, anti-tax advocates, and social conservatives, religious conservatives, seems to have fractured. Each of the wings of the party seem to have a favorite candidate. And is it possible for them to put this back together again? I mean, can somebody reconstitute a winning coalition? Can the Republicans win?
No, I don't know. I guess they can. if it's strong enough sexist or racist feelings on the part of the general public, what we like to think they're not.
Yeah, anything is possible. And and with McCain rising, I'm looking.
McCain's dangerous for the Dems. He's probably their least preferred candidate.
dangerous for the
I'm
country
thinking,
also.
could he win if all of it?
Can't help it.
Could he win if he's the nominee and you have all of this, subliminal racism, subliminal sexism rising up, on the other side?
And you think that's inevitable?
But he has so little. He generates so little energy.
McCain.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he generated an awful lot of energy in the polls. I mean, come on.
Well,
I mean,
again,
and he won New Hampshire.
Iowa and New Hampshire are those are very small numbers in terms of actual people who go to the polls. It's very small numbers.
Smaller than Brooklyn or Queens.
And not necessarily typical of what the rest of the country is going to do. So I think, I'm holding off on saying anything about McCain because I want to see how he's going to do in other parts of the country.
But, it's interesting because even the Republicans talk about polls. There is resentment and opposition to the war in Iraq and the foreign policy, even among Republicans, I think. So that is a very big problem for him if he's running as president and really wanting to add additional troops and continue the war in Iraq, because he's going to lose those independents, and I think.
But is McCain appealing to people on issues, or is it, as you suggest, Sheryl, is it simply a question of competence? I mean, if you look at
it's a character.
It's character.
rather.
It's that he sticks with those positions. Except,
And American
except that he
people
went
vote
to
on
Bush.
character.
He opposed Bush very strongly 4 years ago, right? And
Well,
now
the tax
he's
cuts.
supporting
Well, I
him.
mean,
Right.
come on. He was the presumed establishment candidate. But he's risen like Lazarus.
Yeah, as I said, I think it's
just
going
can't
to be
tell.
about. I mean, people are upset about the war, and I think that will be a factor. But I think people will vote ultimately not necessarily on policy, but on things like character and charisma and Bill Hillary or whatever. I mean, I think and electability. I think that's what they will vote on.
So doesn't Huckabee win that race on charisma?
Oh, please.
You're really nasty. Okay, let's talk about Huckabee. I found...
No, let's not.
Please. It's my show and I want to talk about Huckabee. To a certain extent, Huckabee is more similar to Edwards and Obama than the rest of the Republicans. He's talking about hope. He's talking about faith, which, Obama's talking about the same stuff. There's a tinge of populism there as well.
Yeah.
And even though he's a creationist, and in a sense we look at him at out of the mainstream, when I listened to Huckabee in Iowa, for example, and then I listened to Edwards and I listened to Obama, and I said, wait a second, there's something there. Is there something there, or is it me?
I think Huckabee is, to me, Huckabee is someone that we should be very cautious with because he does come off the way that you're talking. But if you look at some of the things he's proposing, they're pretty scary. I mean, among other things, I saw him backing away from this the other day. But at one point he was proposing that we revoke birthright citizenship, which means that and this is tied to the immigration the anti-immigration attitude that the Republican, outside of Bush, that other areas of the Republican Party are pushing, where they wanted to change something that's in our Constitution, that if you're born in this country, you're automatically a U.S. citizen, and he was pushing it, and Romney was pushing it. Now Huckabee backed away from it the other day, saying that he just realized that we would need a constitutional amendment, but that's baloney. They knew all along that it would require a constitutional amendment. What happened was that people, that they saw that people weren't going for it. But I think it's dangerous, and it really is telling about him and where he wants to take things.
Okay,
Is
now
he the only candidate with a flat tax, the Republican?
Well, Rudy's got all kinds of tax policies, not quite a flat tax. But let's look at him. So we've got McCain, we've got Romney, we've got Rudy, we've got Huckabee. We haven't mentioned Fred Thompson. Is Fred Thompson alive, even if he does something?
Just barely.
Or is it because we've been comatose from the beginning? Can we eliminate some of these guys? I mean, is Thompson out?
I think you can strike Thompson, yeah.
I believe you can strike
to a
him
certain
out,
extent, it's with Thompson. But I mean,
They say it's the South, and we haven't been to the South
Right.
yet. And that's supposedly
Right.
his territory, so
right,
you can't really knock him out.
And then what we've seen some testy exchanges between Thompson Thompson and Huckabee, and Thompson and Huckabee and Romney. These guys, I don't think these guys like each other. To a certain extent, I think it's more than political. It seems to me personal.
Nobody
as
likes
well.
anybody these days.
Yes, is that just part of it that nobody likes? Well, who would you want on the Republican side, Romney? Romney.
Bite your tongue.
I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know if you'd
As
want...
a partisan Democrat, don't you want the weakest Republican?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure who's the weakest.
Okay.
But I'm also trying to figure if should the Republicans win, who I think is the most responsible. I think that's a big problem, too.
Okay. Which of the Republicans, if you had to vote for, would you vote for? If you had to. And why? I'm not asking you
You're all
then.
going to scream.
Go ahead.
Do I have to answer that?
Yes.
No, you don't have to. But it's my show,
I
yes.
would most likely vote for Romney.
Why?
Because I think underneath it, he's more liberal than the rest of them.
So he could flip back to being a Massachusetts liberal. So you're depending on his flip-flopping to
Right.
get you through.
Yeah.
Cheryl?
It would probably be McCain
On the character issue.
on the
I guess.
character issue.
But what about the war? That was an important issue for you.
It's bad, but I mean, we're already in it. You know,
Yeah, but
I don't think
we're
he's
never
going
gonna get out of it.
You know, I don't think he's going to escalate it at this point. I just
That's
trust.
what he talks about.
You know, I just
Character trumps issues for you.
character.
But he could win.
affects issues.
See, I think he's a strong candidate. He could win.
Yeah, and I mean,
McCain
the war
could
thing
win?
is scary, but I mean, I would have to go with him on character.
Given the fluidity of the race and you as an observer, do you see a dynamic? Can you see your way through this one?
I really can't, and I don't think Romney would go back to being.
You don't?
No, I think
Then I
Romney
won't vote
was.
for him. I'll change.
I
You
think
convinced
Romney
me.
was masquerading as a liberal in order to get elected in Massachusetts, as I think what happened there.
So this is the triple reduction.
Real
He's a real flip-flopping.
I would write in. I changed my mind.
Okay. Who are you writing in, please?
I'm not sure yet.
Oh, okay.
But I really don't. I think the Republicans, it's all up for grabs still. It's amazing, but I really don't see.
Yeah, it's really
who's
fluid,
emerging.
And
at
I
this
think you're
point.
right, Cheryl. I think it really is this amalgam of charisma and electability and character and sort of a referendum on Bill and Hillary and change in faith and
how that
something.
all roils up together, and to give you somebody that you think is the most electable, who you go for. In the
Okay.
end.
Now let's go to our mayor. Does he? I have several questions. Does he or doesn't he? If he does, what happens?
Does he
Does he run?
No.
Why not?
I believe him when he says he doesn't want to be president. I mean, I believe him.
Why? That he doesn't want to be president, or he doesn't want to run for president?
He doesn't want to run for president.
Right.
I mean, would he take it? Sure. I mean, I would take it if it were forced on me.
And if you had a couple of $1 billion to spend.
Right, exactly. But no, I don't think he.
And I
he
think you'd
wants
be a
to
good
run.
president.
Thank you, Ronnie. And you'd be my campaign manager. No, I don't think he
wouldn't
wants
do a
to
good
run, and it's too late.
Is it too late?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's too late because he's got the money. So I don't think it's too
So the
late.
$1 billion
But
that Kevin
it's
Sheeky's
interesting,
passing around.
somebody really on New Year's Eve, on the New Year's Eve program, who was it? The guy who hosts American Idol or something asked him.
With Dick Clark, whatever his name.
Asked him, "Are you running?" And he and Mike Bloomberg said, "No, I am not running. But I do want to have a role as an advisor, an ambassador kind of thing." I forget the exact words that he used. And I really think that he really does want to have an advisory role. He wants to be an ambassador. And I think he does want to continue to do his philanthropic work.
So he's not running, you're telling me?
I wouldn't rule it out. You know
keeping-
why?
he's keeping his options open.
He's keeping his options open, and he's always
laying
had
the
people.
groundwork.
He's always had people around him who want him to run.
Right.
And so he could be talked into it by those people.
And also, it obviously depends on what happens, particularly on February 5th.
He can't run. I mean, he cannot run against Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama. How can he run against them? And if those are going to be the Democratic
so wait a minute.
nominees...
Your argument is that if he runs, he becomes the rich Ralph Nader who gives the election to the Republicans.
He's running on an independent line. Could he have won if he ran in the Republican primary? That's a whole different story.
No, of course
But
not.
as an independent, how can he do that? He can't justify it.
So you're making a moral argument here?
A political argument. He can't get the votes. He can't justify it. There aren't enough Republicans who would vote for him. He's a Jewish mayor from New York. I mean, it's ridiculous.
So your argument is he doesn't run because he can't win.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
if he's
true.
in it to win it,
Right.
he doesn't go in it because
Right.
he can't get the 270 electoral
Right.
votes.
Right.
But suppose if he wants to make history. Now, we talked about history
Sure,
last
What kind of
week.
history?
How is he
Well,
gonna
Michael
make-
Bloomberg gets the most of any third-party candidate in American
Michael
history.
Bloomberg is responsible for Huckabee winning.
Or responsible for somebody else winning.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think
I don't
that's
think
the kind of.
he's
I
not
don't think
stupid.
he's trying to make that kind of history.
No.
I don't get the sense that that's the kind of history that Mike Bloomberg
He's
wants
not political.
to make.
That's right. He's not political.
No, he isn't.
If he runs.
He's not going to run. So why are we talking
No,
about?
no,
Let's talk
no,
about.
come on,
Let's
I
go
wanna-
back to the Democrats.
You want to go back to last week? Well, we might have to if you're not going to cooperate. Okay, I'm getting off Mike Bloomberg just for you for the moment.
No, you can go back. I don't care.
We've heard the term, but not very often, the term brokered convention. Now, I don't think there are any brokers left. I don't think there's a Richard Daley or a Ron Brown. But
And they were Democrats.
and they would
Who
that's
were
true.
the
But
Republican brokers?
do we have who are the Republican brokers?
I guess
Or do we
Bush.
have the potential in the Republican race of not having a clearly defined nominee
Going
after
in.
February 5th if it comes out where Rudy does win Florida and this big gamble pays off and that somehow propels him into February 5th. I think Rudy's in real trouble though because he doesn't have money and I'm hearing stories that they're calling business people up and telling them that he might drop out. Now, I don't know if that's misinformation or disinformation, but if Rudy doesn't win Florida, he's out. McCain could win on February 5th, except he has no money and neither does Huckabee. I don't know what's going on.
So what are you saying, that the Republican brokers would give it to
I don't
Bloomberg?
know who. Is it possible? No, never give it to Bloomberg. Are we looking at the possibility of having a convention that's meaningful for the first time that I can remember? I mean,
Could be.
For the Republicans.
Right.
Reagan and Ford sort of fought it out to the convention, but it never really got to the floor. It doesn't look very likely in the Democrats, but I mean, are we looking at the possibility
be.
in the Republicans?
Because
Could be.
this is quite possible.
Anything.
Yeah, see, this is the nobody. This is the nobody knows, as we
Anything
said.
is
This is
possible.
the nobody knows
Right,
election.
yeah.
Right.
If you, what are the defining issues on the Republican side, and then we'll switch to the Democrats.
For
What
Democrats
are-
or for Republicans?
for Republicans and for
But
their perception of what they are for
they
the
don't
electorate.
disagree, do they? Do any,
Well,
except for Ron Paul.
what are the dominant issues that they're talking about? What are the issues that the Democrats are talking about? And what are the issues that the people are talking about?
Tax cuts for Republicans, certainly. Smaller government in general.
Yeah, people.
I
are
think
talking-
even Republicans want out of the war.
Well, Ron Paul's been
What did
outspoken.
Republicans say about immigration when we were in Iowa?
I think, well, unfortunately, the issue of immigration is an issue that the Democrats are not talking about, which is unfortunate. And the Republicans are talking
Why
about.
aren't they talking about it?
Because it's too controversial for them, and
they
the
lose
Republicans
votes?
and the Republicans. Well, who knows? I mean, let's talk about the Hispanic vote.
Let's talk about the Hispanic vote.
Which in Nevada will be the first. Will give us an indication
On the 19th.
because there are some significant numbers there. 25% of the population there is Hispanic, so we'll get some significant numbers.
Unfortunately, their caucuses are not a primary.
Right, but so that'll give us a sense, of how the Latino vote is going. Hispanics have supported the Clintons, and just anecdotally, the folks that I've interviewed are overwhelmingly for Hillary Clinton. But who knows? But the Republicans talk about immigration. They don't talk about immigration policy. They talk about enforcement. They talk about walls,
wall.
which, by the way, Hillary and Obama both voted for and need to be questioned on, and with regard to those votes. But they talk about enforcement. They talk about the
And McCain's really modified his
the
position
patrol.
on this.
The patrol, and they talk about throwing people out and keeping people out. I mean, that's not immigration policy.
Talk about the Hispanic vote, though. Is the Hispanic vote finally going to be the powerhouse that it was predicted to be in the past, but never really turned out to be?
Well, I mean, I can't answer that question, but I'll tell you that there have been significant gains made in terms of registering people to vote. People were encouraged, especially after all the negative and nasty rhetoric around the immigration issue. People who had not gotten around to becoming citizens yet but were eligible became citizens. There were a lot of grassroots organizations and nonprofit organizations that started programs to help people become citizens and also to get people registered to vote. The NALEO, which is the National Organization of Latino Elected Officials, just announced that they broke their own goals for getting people registered this year.
Are they unified in a position on immigration?
There's not unity. I think that the Latino community is unified on the fact that that people's humanity and dignity needs to be respected, and that people need to be treated. We're talking about human beings here, not cattle. And that laws are written with varying degrees of penalties because jaywalking is not the same as murder, and yet when we're talking about immigrants and people being in this country illegally, we're talking about we're using very harsh rhetoric to talk about this situation and not taking into account the fact that it's not clear cut. I mean, you have in one family you will have some people who are citizens, some people who are legal residents, and some people who are here illegally, because in the United States now it takes 10 to 15 years to bring your brothers and sisters in, and people just get desperate to be together.
But also the flip side of immigration for Republicans, I mean, they care about enforcement and keeping the border safe and kicking people out.
No, keeping one border safe. The U.S.-Mexico border is really the only one we're talking
about. And you cannot run so many businesses. You cannot get crops harvested without what are currently illegal aliens. You get rid of the illegal immigrants. You get rid of them. The crops don't get harvested. You can't run the restaurants.
What was the town in Pennsylvania that collapsed almost?
Okay, let's sort of wrap up our 2 weeks. We've agreed that this is a nobody knows election because we really don't know what's happening because of the interplay of these various factors. We really don't know who the Republican nominee is going to be. It could be any one of 5 people right now.
We
got the sense on the Democratic side. What looks like the two standard bearers in November, and what is going to be the dominant either issue or characteristic? You've got 10 seconds.
It could be McCain and either Hillary or Obama.
And is there a dominant issue? Or is it not an issue but character?
I think it's character.
Evelyn.
I think I agree with Sheryl on the candidates, and I think that I wanted to add that especially for the Latino community, the cost of living, the economy, jobs, education, healthcare, those continue to be really critical issues. And on the healthcare issue, Hillary, is totally identified with that issue. So she's a strong candidate.
You get the last word, Ronnie.
Well, I think we know it's going to be a white man on the Republican line and either a woman or an African American on the Democratic line. And I'm not sure what the issues are. I think they change. I mean, obviously, all the issues we've mentioned are very important, but we don't know what's going to happen in this world. And so we don't know.
So nobody knows.
We don't know anything. You just invited obviously we don't have it.
We don't have it. That's good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you, Evelyn.
Thank you.
And thank you, Sheryl.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Doug Muzzio. Let us know what you think about this show. You can reach us at CUNY.tv. When you get there, click on the bar that says Contact Us and send your email. Whatever it is. Thanks, no thanks, obnoxious, do it. Send it.